my god. How about that new intro music? Fucking Colin Gilly. Thanks, bro. Like, that's some crazy shit. I like that. I'm gonna keep using that at least for now. I'm gonna explore some of your other stuff. Maybe I'll add some different music as my intro music, but fuck, yeah, that was good stuff. Alright. So today, we're gonna talk about some nerd stuff, which is actually, I recorded like a month ago. I'm sorry that it took me this long to get it out. I threw it back out, and then I went on vacation, and then, you know, once you're used to not doing something, it's hard to make it like your regular thing. So I do apologize that it's taken me this long to get this episode out. But I think those of my IBAM fans that really appreciate what I do will enjoy this episode. Like, I just listened to it, and I I just edited it. And I did less editing in this episode than I usually do, because I think everyone, including myself, will enjoy it. It's fucking hilarious. It's a good episode. I don't even think I'm gonna tell the world what this episode is about. I think you're gonna have to listen to it to like actually understand. So this is about a comic, my least favorite comic book character, and I'm gonna explain why. So thank you for coming back. Thank you for your patience, and hopefully you won't have to wait as long for the next one if I have anything to say about it. God bless you, and enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to I Bought a Microphone, and so glad to talk to you again. So, last episode, I went a little all over the place on that one, which is unfortunate. I mean, one thing I forgot to explain was I love Star Wars. I'm pretty sure I said that, but I don't know that I made it clear because I seem to complain a lot. And also, that up until that point, up until Force Awakens had been released, I had become a bitter Star Wars fan. Like, my heart had been crushed slowly over years of talking to other Star Wars quote unquote fans who did nothing but hate Star Wars. And I feel like though I walked through my history with Star Wars pretty clearly, and I enjoyed that part, and I talked about Solo and why I didn't like it very bitchily, which Star Wars fans are wont to do. So that part I feel like I did pretty well too. I felt like I missed the part where I told you that the reason this was such a big deal was because I loved Star Wars so much, and I had been used to people just shitting on it for the last, 20 odd years of my life. So now that I was finally one of them, one of the bitchy Star Wars fans, it was kind of a emotional awakening or realization for me. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I just wanted to address it one more time before I move on entirely, and will never hear me bitch about Star Wars again. I'm just kidding, obviously. I mean, something will come up and I'll have to renege on that. So, I'll have to retract that. I don't know. Is renege an offensive phrase? I don't really know. I I don't really know what it means. I've only heard it in the context of taking things back. Um, so we'll just edit all that out. We'll say retract. Something's been on my mind recently, and I wanted to like get it off. Like I've been get it out, get it off. Whatever. Okay, I'm jacking off my mind. Whatever. That's fine. Um, so I've talked a lot about comic books and nerd stuff here, but comic books a lot because I'm obsessed with them. I love everything about them. MCU just wrapped up its big, like multi-year fucking movie franchise with Endgame, which I just watched again recently, and it's so good. I'm gonna give it another maybe 2 weeks or something, and then we're gonna have to have a conversation about that movie. I can't not. Um, but until then, so I love the X-Men. I've talked about some of the X-Men in the past. Like I mean, I didn't like when I was getting into comics, I kind of just went all over the place. I found Captain America early, and I was like, "This is my dude." And I started, collecting, not sequentially or anything, but started just grabbing Captain America comics here and there as I found them. Used to get them in the old Bookmans on Grant and what is that? Grant and Campbell in old Tucson. It's not there anymore. It's gone. They fucking, which is fine because Grant is a horrible street and nobody needs to drive on it. And then I found other stuff here and there. The first comic I ever serialized, where I got each issue month after month after month, was volume 2 of X-Men. So there was the Uncanny X-Men for a long time, and that originated the series way back. And then after a while, the old guys left. They retired. They graduated the school and they left. And they broke off and they did their own things. And then there was, the new guys, Storm and Colossus and Nightcrawler and all of that. The new team. And the other guys eventually formed X Factor. But in the 90s, they brought all your old favorites together. Both of the favorites of the old team and the newer team, and created 2 comic books. The Uncanny X-Men, which was the gold team, and the X-Men comic, which was the blue team. Typical colors of the X-Men being gold and blue. So the gold team consisted of Storm, who was badass in her own right. Also, she was the leader. And then there was Jean Grey, Iceman, Archangel, and Colossus, right? And then there was the blue team, which was led by Cyclops, which also consisted of Beast, Wolverine, Rogue, Psylocke, and Gambit. And I really feel like we're loading the deck on one of these teams. I'm just saying. In the 90s, Rogue, Wolverine, and Gambit were fucking huge. And you put them all on the same team. You don't spread them out to try and get in more fans of in multiple titles. No, of course not. You got to keep Rogue and Gambit together because that sexual tension Keep them teenagers rubbing themselves. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Not that I was one of the ones that did that or anything. Um, all that sexual tension will keep them teenagers, attached to the characters, right? But so I was really big into the X-Men, so kind of mid 90s ish I started actually following the X-Men from issue to issue. I subscribed to a service where they sent you the issues of Uncanny X-Men per month. I signed up for a whole year of that, which was awesome, and actually, surprisingly not that expensive back in the day. These days we don't even buy comics; we just read them online. But I'm kidding. I don't buy comics anymore, but I buy trade paperbacks by the fucking, I don't know, volume, gallon, by the pound. Well, I guess they're solid, so by the pound. Man, I mean, like, being an adult with disposable income and being able to buy the things that you loved and could never afford. I mean, yeah, nobody's gonna, like, bury me when I die. I'll just be in a pauper's grave or whatever, but, like, fucking, I got so many comics. It's fucking awesome. Look, don't read too much into that. Some of this is humor, some of this is a cry for help. You try to figure out which it is. No, none of it's a cry for help. I'm very happy in my life. I'm fucking, Jesus Christ. I don't plot any of this out, so now it sounds like I'm a crazy person. I don't know how much of this I'll edit out and how much I'll leave in. I might just leave this whole sequence in just to, show you kind of my process. Like, I fucking freewheel a lot of this. Like, none of it's, I don't script any of it. I think that's clearly obvious, but, I mean, when I do my episodes, when I do my interview episodes, I try to have, like, questions that I, try to focus things so we don't just randomly talk about everything. I try to stay on topic as much as I can, but I don't script any of it. So anyway, the reason so many tangents ago, if I can trace this line of thoughts back, what I was talking about was the first comic I got into serialized was X-Men. I would get the Uncanny X-Men, every month. Came in the mail. After that, I started buying the X-Men series. Uncanny X-Men, different series. All right. I started around issue, I can't remember the exact one. It was the one with Omega Red. I want to say it's like 16 or 19, somewhere in there. And I actually got that series for the next couple of months and read it. Because one thing the X-Men has always done better than any other comic is soap opera stuff. Like, one of my favorite things about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is a topic that I will delve into very deeply on this podcast one of these days, is just the, there's monsters and, everything. But the great thing about that show is, yeah, there's monsters, but also there's, teenage drama happening. And who's going to take me to the prom? And can I even go to the prom if I have to kill all these vampires? And what do I have to do to fucking, get a date to the prom? Because everyone's afraid of me because, I'm super strong and whatnot. It's great. And that's, the X-Men's got that in spades. X-Men is got, a bunch of people that live together in a house, and none of them are related to each other. So there's all this tension and infighting. And of course, they're all mutants, which, you can substitute for any, subjugated form of humanity. They could be black people or they could be gay or whatever. And they're all being ostracized by society and shoved into this house where they're supposed to be taught that they're fine just the way they are and they're going to be accepted, but they're constantly reminded that the outside world fears and hates them, and they're having to fight their own kind because they're members of their own subsect of humanity are some of them feel like maybe the world would be better without everybody else. Maybe let's kill all the straight people in the world and, us gay people can be happy together. Like, it's a ridiculous metaphor. I understand that. And it's taken to the extreme. But, that's kind of what it's based on, prejudice in many of its forms. And, like, if the people that were, subjected to that prejudice, would they and had some form of retribution that the other side, the side that oppressed them, was powerless against, would they use it? Would they try to eliminate the people that were persecuting them? I don't know. It's hard to say. And nobody's it's not, nobody who's being oppressed currently has laser eyes. So, it's hard to say. Obviously, they feel strongly, and they should, and nobody should be oppressed because of how they were born. Nobody should be oppressed in general. Wow. Like, this was gonna be a quick one, and then I went all over the place on that. I can't even fucking tell you how succinct I was planning on making that and how insane it is now from where it started. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. So what we're here to talk about, way back at the very beginning of this conversation, I talked about how I like to talk about comic books on this podcast, and I've talked about, some of my favorite superheroes and some superheroes that I'm not crazy about, i.e. Wolverine and Batman, overexposure. But what I'm actually going to talk about now is my least favorite superhero. And this is, it's he's got a pretty cool power set, and I'll give him those props for that. But there are very specific reasons while this guy may say he's a hero, he is actually a terrible, terrible person. And of course, I'm talking about the X-Men, so it's going to be one of the mutants. And today, we are going to be talking about Cyclops, the leader of the blue team back in the day. Currently in the Marvel Universe, I believe he is dead. I don't think they've resurrected him yet. But until his death, he just did a lot of bad things. I am going to name just a couple of things, but there's other examples that you can look at. But say what you want about Cyclops. He's, like I said, he's got a really cool power set. His fucking optic blasts, which, from what we all understand, what we've come to understand, is it's not that he can't control them. It's that he's got a psychic block. He's got like PTSD that stops him from being able to control his optic blasts. So he's got to have these special ruby quartz visors or glasses that keep them restrained, right? So just that, there's a problem right there. What's this PTSD that's holding this guy back and whatnot? And there's this whole background about his parents and what happened to them, and it's a big mystery. They died in a plane crash, and why did they die? I'm sure some people. I haven't read that part of the storyline, so I haven't gotten there. He's got a brother, Havoc, who's got similar powers to him. They don't come from his eyeballs. He can just kind of project force waves in front of him as opposed to a optic blast. And by the way, they're not laser beams. They don't have heat. They're just force. It's like a giant punch. It's like a red flashlight punch. It's weird. It's his optic blasts are not laser beams is the point I'm saying. It's not heat, it's force. So it's like he opens his visor, the laser beam comes out, and it's like a rock is being thrown or something. It's like kinetic energy is the point behind it. It's not heat energy. So, which is unimportant. I mean, fuck Cyclops. He's a dick. I mean, if you watch him in the X-Men movies, he's pretty unlikable. For the most part, he doesn't have a lot of redeeming qualities, and that gave Brett Ratner no excuse to kill him off in the first 15 minutes of the third movie. So, what the fuck that was about, I don't know. And why they killed Havoc in the last X-Men movie, I don't know. Like, I don't understand why they keep killing Summers off in movies. And yeah, he's supposedly got some superior genetic destiny. I don't know, Mr. Sinister's all obsessed with the Summers bloodline. But that doesn't stop Mr. Sinister as a bad guy. We'll talk about him later. That does not stop Cyclops from being a terrible person. So, I mean, let's gloss over the fact that he's pretty much a dick a lot of the time. Like he's got no sense of humor whatsoever, and he's always, constantly fighting with the people that he's working with because they don't take things seriously enough or whatever, So that's just where we're starting from. So he's just automatically a dick. It's just his personality. All right. So Jean Grey, poor Jean Grey. The Marvel Universe has not treated her very well. She's been cloned and swapped around, and all sorts of horrible things have happened to her. Jean Grey is Cyclops' true love, supposedly. Whatever. So she, becomes possessed with the Phoenix Force, and she dies, right? Then there's a clone of her, Madeline Pryor. She looks pretty much exactly like Jean Grey. She doesn't have any of the, horrible psychic Phoenix powers or anything like that. She's just, a wicked hot redhead. And, so Cyclops is cool. You look like my girlfriend that just died. Literally just died, like a couple weeks ago. I'll marry you, and we'll have a child. Right? So he marries a woman who looks like his dead girlfriend, has a child with her, and then pretty much almost immediately takes off and goes to lead the X-Men again. Like not totally abandons his wife and child. He still goes back and visits them on the weekends or whatnot. And then, wait for it, Jean Grey turns out to not be dead. She was in some sort of cocoon in the ocean. And the Avengers rescue her. She comes back up. And Beast, Iceman, the old X-Men team get together to form X-Factor. Cyclops immediately, without any hesitation, abandons his wife and new child to go and hang out with his old friends and Jean Grey, the once love of his life, right? After he had like settled down with her in the woods, he's like chopping wood, and like they have a fucking cabin and they're all isolated and snug as a bug in a rug. And she like he takes off when he finds out Jean Grey's alive. Madeline like calling him on the phone, he's just ditching her over and over again. Meanwhile, Jean Grey come back to life, thinks Scott still might have something for her because as far as she's concerned, like, only days have passed. Years might have passed for him, but for her, it's only been, a short period of time. He does not tell her about his new wife, who looks exactly like her, and the child that he had with her. He doesn't say anything, just completely hides that. And they just move on. Eventually, the child gets infected with the techno-organic virus and sent into the future, and they just forget about it. And they go on as if, they're just a regular happy couple. And they get married for some reason. And, he's not unfaithful to her in the real world, but he does fantasize about Psylocke in front of her, which is funny because, you can't really hide things from a telepath. So, like, and he's like such a fucking dick about it too. He's like, "Oh, I was thinking about you." And she's like, "No, you weren't. I fucking read your mind, dumbass." But he never actually does anything with her. What he does do is have sex with the White Queen, not physically, though, in their minds. So she's like treating him for some kind of, who knows? Let's see. Yeah, so, I can't even, I don't know how he fucking justifies this, right? But, like, so, he's with Jean Grey, and Scott, ever the loyal man that he is, thinking things are, maybe getting a little boring in the old sack there. So, he reaches out to Emma Frost, the White Queen, who's another pretty powerful telepath. And they have little fun games in their minds, So they don't actually physically have sex. They do it in a, in the mind world where it's, almost basically the same thing. Because what, the mind makes happens, whatever. The Matrix talks all about this shit. Anyway, so, and of course, Jean Grey finds out about it because, again, she's like the second most powerful telepath on the planet after fucking Professor Xavier. So what do you think was gonna happen? So he treats her like shit, And anyway, she dies again because comic book writers cannot stop fucking with Jean Grey for some reason. I don't know what she did to comic book writers, but they just love to screw with her. So she dies again, and old Scott Summers, Cyclops, makes out with Emma Frost. Makes out with Emma Frost, the White Queen, the gal that he cheated on his now dead wife with. He makes out with her on her top of her grave. Right? What the fuck is up with this guy? He can't stop just being an asshole. Even when they're dead, he just wants to spit on them one more time just to make sure. So he moves on from that and just gets worse and worse. He creates, instead of, adhering to Professor Xavier's dream of mutants and humans living together side by side, he creates a new X squad of the most violent and deadly mutants out there to go out and, kill people who are a threat to mutanity or whatever. And, he goes extreme enough where he takes control of. It's like Alcatraz or something. He's got a whole group of mutants there that's holed out. And the Phoenix Force gets brought back, is heading towards Earth. And, of course, all the mutants are freaking out because they know all about the Phoenix Force. They've been there, they've done that. This is after House of M, so there's only 100, 300 mutants left on the whole planet. So naturally, Scott Summers gets all up in arms, wants to start a war with the Avengers. Of course, that doesn't work out very well. Through a series of complicated events that I'm not even going to bother trying to go through here. The Phoenix Force gets broken up into 5 different shards and 5 different mutants, including Scott Summers and Namor. Namor's a mutant. Hey, check it out. Get pieces of the Phoenix Force. And they work together to create a utopian society. But of course, it falls apart. They start fighting each other. Every time somebody gets defeated, the other 5 or the other 4, whatever, the other people in possession of the Phoenix Force get stronger. Blah blah blah, so on and so forth. Eventually, it becomes Scott Summers is the Phoenix Force. He has control of all of it, and our hero kills Professor X. That's right. Scott Summers, the guy who would arguably have no life and no loves at all if it wasn't for Professor Xavier, kills his mentor and surrogate father. What a dick, right? Oh my god, he's just such a terrible person. Eventually, he learns the error of his ways, and he gets defeated by a future. It's so complicated. I'm going to try and say it. So it's a future offspring of his line. It's not his child, but it's like a genetic descendant of the Summers line, right? And she has mastered the power of the Iron Fist, right? And she has some mutant power. I can't remember exactly what it does, but her mutant power combined with the power of the Iron Fist, she's able to basically punch the Phoenix Force out of Scott Summers, and it disperses, it breaks apart into 1,000 different little pieces and becomes the blossoming of a new mutant race on the Earth. So, I don't even want to get into how ridiculous that is, because House of M was such a, whole trial, and House of M is the thing that erased all the mutants from the Marvel Universe. And this whole fucking sequence of events just undid that whole sequence of events. And, the whole fucking sequence of events was whole completely useless and dumb. But anyway, so after this, Cyclops is completely unrepentant, right? Unrepentant, not sorry that he killed Professor Xavier. Not sorry one bit. He's a real dick. He gets broken out of prison and starts this rogue force, of X-Men fighting for mutant rights all over the fucking world, just fucking trying to do good for, whatever mutant kind or whatever, but not really doing that good. And then it comes to a real head. Now, this point, I'm going to put an asterisk on at the beginning, and I'll explain that at the end. So, Cyclops is really upset. So there's this cloud of Terrigen mist. If you're not familiar with that, Terrigen mist is the stuff that makes regular humans into Inhumans. Small percentages of the human species have a recessive gene that reacts to Terrigen mists and makes them into superpowered humans called Inhumans. They're not mutants because they're not born that way. They're activated by the Terrigen Mists. Huge pockets of them. There's these 3 clouds that are circling the world, or two or three, and they are creating Inhumans wherever they pass. The problem is the Terrigen Mists are toxic to mutants. The mutants get a disease called Mpox and they slowly die. So, Scott Summers, not really crazy about that. He's ready to go to war with the Inhumans. I'm not sure why the Inhumans are such a dick about this, personally. Like, his people are literally dying from these clouds. Like, it's like if, we just had clouds of mustard gas that slowly rolled over cities periodically and killed, like, I don't know, 10% of the population. And we tried to stop the mustard gas clouds, but the guys who created them were like, hey, the mustard gas clouds are part of our cultural heritage. Like, that's sort of like the arguments that we're making here. So, honestly, I feel like the Inhumans are being kind of dicks about this whole thing. But I still don't necessarily side with Cyclops because he's an asshole. So, his plan is to... So, his group narrowly avoid a brush with the cloud. And they're like, this is it. We're done. We're going to wipe this cloud out. So Cyclops' badass plan is he finds a mutant who has the ability to turn substances from one thing to another. Like, he can convert molecules from, a gas that's harmful to a gas that's inert and harmless, right? So he finds this dude, and to be fair, he gives him this whole, St. Crispin's Day speech, and the guy volunteers for the mission. They take him up into the sky, and they drop him on the cloud, and he falls through it, and of course he contracts, like, the worst case of Mpox that he possibly could going through the cloud, but he manages to transform the cloud into something that's harmless to mutants. And this, of course, the Inhumans get all pissed off for some fucking reason. Again, like, I don't understand why they necessarily didn't understand why the mutants were... Like, these things are killing us! Like, can you fucking not... Can you maybe suck it up into a vacuum and, control this goddamn cloud? No. We want it to roam freely to kill as many mutants as possible and create as many Inhumans as possible. What's wrong about that? So, anyway, this is one of those, like, Civil War type events that happens where I'm kind of not on anybody's side. But I'm definitely more pro-mutant than anti-mutant. But the reason I put an asterisk on that one, which, so Cyclops gets a guy to sacrifice himself. He dies as he falls through the cloud and turns it into an inert gas. And, like, Cyclops is, like, fine with that. But it turns out, if we rewind a couple of days, Cyclops has actually died of the Mpox. And Emma Frost has been creating an image of him that's been doing the horrible things that he would do to make this guy destroy the cloud, to force a confrontation between the Inhumans and the mutants, because she believes that's the only hope for their survival. So that's not necessarily Cyclops being a dick, that last example, but Cyclops being a dick before that enabled that deception to happen. So he is at least tangentially responsible. Wow, that was a lot of nerd. Like, I didn't know I needed to get that out. Like, when I was going all over the Terrigen Mists and the fucking, the blue team and the gold team and all of that. Oh man, like there are some times where your inner geek, man, you just gotta get it out. Hashtag geekdom. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this short-ish episode. It was a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but still shorter than most of them have been. And there'll be another one soon. So thank you for listening to IBAM. And I love you guys so very much for tuning in and for your enthusiasm. And I will talk to you soon. Have a good one.